Okay, I'm going to be tying a mayfly today, and I'm going to kind of tie it a little bit differently, a whole lot differently. This was inspired by Gary LaFontaine's live caddis, but instead of tying it on a salmon hook or any of them other hooks, I'm going to be tying it on a Dairiki 270 size 18. But the first thing I want to talk about is this gap. It's kind of tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in my vise, and I'm going to kind of put it on a slant. Don't crush it, just tighten it up. And I'm going to kind of open this up just a little. So you can kind of see how I opened up the gap. And that allows me a wee bit better hookup with what I'm doing with this hook, which is fishing it upside down on a dry. So now I'm going to leave it in the vise like that, and I'm going to tie it with a dark brown 8/0 thread. And I'm going to go ahead and start my thread about 2 eyes back, and I'm going to coat the hook. Now, I'm going to use thread as the body, so I want to keep this nice and flat. So as I wrap back, I'm going to continuously use the tag end to somewhat, as you can see, tighten everything up. So I'm tightening it up, and now I'm going to use the barb as my stopping point, and I'm going to tie in my fibet tails at that barb area. But as you can see, I'm going around the bend and starting to point towards the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right there, and I'm going to go ahead and cut my tag, and now I'm going to take some fibets, and I'm not really going to spend time counting them. I am just going to go ahead and pull a bunch off. I don't really care how many are there. I don't want few. At this point, few is bad, more is good. So I'm going to go ahead and cut me off some. As you can see, I kept the ends equal. I didn't slide them all over the place. So I'm going to measure up the body length from where my thread stops to the end of, or to the hook eye. And I'm going to go ahead and transfer that over. And I'm going to come right over the top, and I'm going to tie these in with just a couple of lashes, pushing my fibets to the top. I'm going to pick them up and slide them to the top. Now I'm going to check the length. And if you can see the length, that's not bad. I'm going to use these fibets as like rudders on this fly also to make it stay square on the top of the surface. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap down, kind of candy caning, as you can see, not pulling hard, just letting the thread do the work. And as I get to the my tying point, I'm going to go ahead and cut and leave those there. I'm going to counter wrap my thread, and I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to start building a wee bit of a thorax, and I'm going to run this thing, and I'm going to use touching thread wraps all the way down, taking my time. Remember, this is a size 18. You don't want a lot of material on here, but you want the material to do what you want it to do, and that is look like a bug body, and you want this body tapered. So as I get to the back where my tails are wrapped in, I'm going to now take my thread, and I'm going to I'm watching them tails and they didn't move. So I'm going to kind of counter wrap just a little bit. And so from here, I'm going to take these tails, I'm going to lean them forward, and now that kind of splays them out a little, and I'm going to kind of look at them, equal them up, just like that. And now I'm going to gently, after counter wrapping my thread, just like you would do a wing, and I'm going to pull that right up through the middle, come to, and as you can see, and I'm going to put one wrap around the base of those tails, and that's going to lock that in. As you can see, they've splayed out very nicely, and they'll stay like that. I don't want a big bump on the end of this thing. I just want it to be splayed out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and show you again. Now that I got that, I'm going to kind of wrap down just like that. And now I'm wrapping forward and I'm going to start creating my body. So as I'm doing this, I'm doing touching wraps, and what I'm really looking at is the fibets on the top of the hook shank are covered. It's kind of like knowing that if they're covered, I've got the correct amount of thread wraps. Not too many, not too little. So I'm going to go ahead and start creating a wee bit of a tapered bump. And this bump is nothing more than my thorax. But I don't want to go too far back. I want to stay right in here. And just like that. Well, I shouldn't say that's my thorax. That's just the tapered end of the body towards the thorax. So now I'm going to hang. So my parachute, I'm going to use some Parapost high vis. And the reason I'm using this is because it kind of splays out. It's not like the Antrons. It has almost like a mind of its own, but boy, is it tough. So I've taken a piece and I've shredded it out, and it's very small in diameter, as you can see. It's almost about the same diameter as my body. So like rubber legs, I'm going to grab underneath and I'm going to pull this right around here like this. And the reason you twist it is it kind of gets rid of all of the fibers. Pull straight up, and now I can set it right there where I want it to be. And I'm going to put a couple of wraps there. Just like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert, and now we're going to tie the rest of this fly upside down. So as I'm wrapping on my hook shank, and I'm going to wrap around that Parapost, just like that. So now it's tied in. So I've got length here. So I want you to understand, don't try to save material and use something short, because your own hand is just going to get in the way. So I'm going to counter wrap my thread, and I'm going to use that to actually start the tension with the wrap around the post. Notice I'm not pulling hard on my thread, and I'm creating a couple of wraps around the bottom. Now when I pull with the bobbin straight to the hook, not like this, or you'll break your thread. And now as I wrap, I'm wrapping right up, letting the thread do its own thing, just like that. I'm not pulling real tight. This is kind of the whole technique of this, is just kind of wrap around. Remember, you got that hook point right there, so you got to be real careful not to bump it. That's kind of where this fly becomes technical. So I get to the back side and I wrap around the bottom, and I come around the top and I pull with my Parapost to make sure everything's nice and tight. And again, I'm going to continue this. I'm going to come back around. I'm going to give it a couple of counter wraps. The length of my thread between my bobbin and my hook is it's very important for thread control. I don't want a huge one. I'm just kind of letting it hang out there to where I can work between the vise, jaws, and that post. And I'm wrapping right up. Notice I'm not pulling at all on this Parapost with my thread. I'm going to give it some more counter wraps, get a better grip on my post, and then start again. Just like this. Extending the length of my thread using my thumb inside my bobbin as I'm wrapping. I want to maintain the length of that thread because I've learned that for me that's where it's easiest to use. And again, I tighten up. Now I'm going to wrap down. I'm just going to candy cane down quickly to get to the bottom of that post. Just like that. Now I'm on the back side. I wrap to the front. And now everything's good and tight. Straighten up. Very nice. So now I'm going to take my hackle. Today I'm using a furnace hackle on this mayfly. I like dark colored flies for winter. I'm going fishing next weekend. Anyway, so I've stripped the barbules off the stem, if you can see that. quite a ways. I like a lot of room. So my goal is to tie this with the dull side up, and that's very important because when you go to tie this off, you don't want to catch any fibers, any of your hackle fibers. So I'm going to tie it in right behind the eye, just like that. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and counter wrap, and I'm going to include this feather dull side to the parapost. I'm trying to show you that. And then I'm going to come right up behind, and I'm going to start the wrap right around from the base of this feather. I need a little more counter wrap. And I'm going to short my thread back up. And again, as I'm doing this, I'm all the way at the top already, and now I'm going to work my way back down. As I'm doing this, I'm consistently watching that hook point, and I'm not pulling hard on this thread whatsoever. Down to the bottom, to the back, just like that. Now then, I've created a nice post with my hackle, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a thorax. So I'm going to use just a wee bit of black Antronish type dubbing, dry fly dubbing, and kind of sparkle, wet my fingers just a little. This is a synthetic, or I wouldn't put this material anywhere near my mouth for germs. And from here, I'm going to go ahead, as you can see, it's very tight on the thread. I don't need a lot. I just need a little bit of a bump, shorten that thread up, come around and just pick it up. And I'm going to start in the front. And I'm going to create a nice little bump right here in front. And you can kind of see that hook is still naked right behind the eye. And I'm creating a nice little bump. Crisscross underneath, because the bottom of this fly is what the fish are going to see. And you do not want to not have your thorax underneath that fly. So it's very important to crisscross underneath that post with your dubbing to make sure that this thing has a nice, perfectly shaped thorax with no bare thread, or even I've actually seen parachutes tied by others, but not this pattern, where they didn't X under, and I've seen their parapost actually show on the bottom. So I'm going to wrap my thread, and I'm going to hang it to the back side of the hook from me, camera side to you, and it's going to be on this side of the back side of the post. Now this is very easy, but it's going to take some finger work. And what you're going to do is notice the bare stem here again. That's going to keep the hackles from getting caught sticking straight up like this in your post. And then I've seen a lot of that done, and that's what it comes from. So now I'm just going to go ahead and take and hold the post. I'm going to pinch the post here. I'm going to take this other finger, and I'm going to push down on the hackle when it goes past the point, and I'm going to start right at the top of that post. Again, if you noticed, I'm not pulling very hard, just like this. And I'm going to push down, and I'm going to come up. And I'm just going to consistently wrap, just like that. Oh, yeah. And I'm watching. If you noticed, I loosened that post up, or the hackle up. And what I did was I readjusted it on that post. So don't say good enough when you're wrapping. You can take the slack off just a little and readjust that hackle. So as you can see, I'm working my way down, push down on that hackle. Notice my fingernails up against that point, and I bring that thing around, and I come underneath. And now, right as I'm at the bottom, I'm going to give this one more. I'm pulling this forward, and that's another reason why I'm not using a feather right now. And I have done these with feathers, but it's really a hard fly. As I come around, I'm happy with the amount of hackle I've got. Just like that. Okay. But I gotta say, I'm not happy with the way it's laying flat. So somewhere along the line, I've twisted this hackle. So again, I'm not satisfied with it. So I probably wouldn't fish it. So I'm not tying this fly to look at it. So here, we're going to start over one more time. Taking that hackle out of this parachute post. And now then, let me stroke these barbules just a little. All right, so now let's get this done. There we go. Now she's laying flat. Okay, I'm watching my hackle, how the dull side is staying up. So I know that I've got everything the way I want it. So now I come in and I'm ready to tie off. Well, this is where you really got to be careful, and here's a trick. I shorten my thread up. Remember, it's on the back side of my hook shank. Counter wrap it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come under I'm going to touch the eye, and I'm going to come straight across. I'm going to pull down on the hackle with my left hand, and I'm going to go touch, and I'm going to go straight back with the thread. And I'm going to come down, around, touch the point, straight back. I'm going to extend my thread. I don't normally do it, but if you can see, I go straight back, and this does not capture any of this hackle. I can actually give it a little bit of a slack here, and as I straighten my thread out, I can come right around it. And now I hang it on my side, just like that, and now it's tied in. So I'm going to turn this so I can see. I'm going to cut the hackle, and before I do anything, I'm going to take my half hitch, and since I normally tie my post off on the post, my hackle, today I'm going to tie it off down here at the eye. And again, that's why I left a little bit of an hook shank at the eye so that I can tie off my thread directly to that hook shank and not on the bulbous part of my thorax that will loosen up when it gets wet, and I could possibly lose my half hitch, which then would cost me my parachute. So there you have that. Now I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to kind of twist it together just like that. I'm going to come above, and notice how I'm cutting it at a slant. Just like that. Now I'm going to look underneath and make sure I've got nothing trapped. Nope. Everything's on top. And as you can see, the tails. Now, one of the cool things about this fly is you see the way it's sitting there? That fly will sit on the water just like this. I have taken this pattern, thrown it on the floor as hard as I could, and it still lands just like this on the floor, the table, the water, my coffee in my coffee cup, which, by the way, make sure you take it out before you drink your coffee again. And I really like it. So again, this is another version inspired by LaFontaine's caddis of a mayfly, and I'm just going to take my head cement and gently touch the post and where my half hitch is at. Thank you. This is another one from the Fly Tires at a Long Table. As you can see, we have our own shirts. Pretty cool.